Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Morley.
And today we are joined by CEO of Masters of Self University and spiritual leader, Rachel Fiori, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Rachel,
hello.
It's so good to see you. Today, let's just get right into it. We are tackling the topic of dehumanization. And before we go on any further, tell the good people, what is dehumanization?
Oh, yeah, it's something that is unfortunately so prevalent. We do it in so many facets of our lives, and I don't think we have the awareness. So I want to bring the awareness to everybody. So here, first is the teaching. Dehumanization. This is literally when we start to force somebody. It's not just seeing them as less than human. We are forcing them to behave not as their human selves. What does that mean? We do it when we tell people to stop crying. What are you crying about? Oh, no, don't cry. Or I'll give you something to cry about. Think about parents when they yell at their children because their child starts to cry about something, or maybe they even got in trouble. They made a poor choice. And a parent says, I'll give you something to cry about. They already have something to cry about, which is why they're crying. So what they're doing, they're forcing the suppression of emotion. Why? Because I cannot handle the fact that you are showing emotion. What that triggers inside of me is my low emotional IQ, my emotional fragility, my inability to be in power, compassion, unconditional love for the other person in front of me who's showing emotion. It is a projection. I'm going to go deeper. This was extraordinarily prevalent in slavery days, of course, because what would happen, slave owners would beat and, whip and torture mothers, for example, when their children were being ripped out of their arms and families were being separated in order to send them up, to different people to go work on different plantations. Families were completely ripped apart. In order for me not to feel the guilt, the shame, what gets triggered inside of me as a slave owner, I don't want to feel shitty about what I'm doing. What is easier for me to be this extraordinarily violent and abusive towards another human being is to not see them as human. So part of dehumanization is to make this person either an emotionalist robot. That's usually how it takes the form in like little kids. We make them robots. We force them to suppress. So that's part of it. But we also turn them into animals. Well, they don't feel normal human emotions anyway. So a lot of times in slave days, what we taught and portrayed Black people of color, that they're animals. They're this, all the horrific things that we did is really, racist things that we did. We portrayed them as either animals or anything that you no longer saw a person of color in the light that they were, meaning as a human who feels pain, who is in the emotional agony of being treated so horrifically. Dehumanization, of course, people who, here's the third part of this that I'm going to bring up before we dive in. Holy shit with the sexism and misogyny in our world. So forget racism. Absolutely. Dehumanization is just flooded and integrated through systemic racism on all levels, what racism is. And sexism and misogyny. Oh my God. What is the first thing that we do when, a man raped a woman? Well, what was she wearing? What? Was she drunk? Well, look at where she was hanging out. She was drunk. Was she on drugs? We blame her. Serial killers who target prostitutes, for example. Well, she's a prostitute, which somehow makes her not human, which means her life doesn't matter. You see what we do? This is dehumanization. And this is how we dehumanize others, so we don't have to feel the shame and the guilt and take divine responsibility for how horrific we are, for how horrifically we treat other people, the harm that we cause by how we show up in this world. Dehumanization. But if she's a slut and she's a prostitute, or she's a drunk girl who got raped, she passed out in the middle of a football field and a drunk guy came around and raped her, true story, by the way, and raped her on the football field, it's her fault. She shouldn't have been there. She should have known better. She shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have had so much to drink. She shouldn't have been wearing that. It's her fault she passed out in the football field. What the fuck? It's not, he's a fucking monster. You find a woman passed out in the field, you don't immediately call 911 and try to protect her and save her? But no, I'm going to rape her instead. And what I'll do is, after I rape her, what we do in our society is we make it her fucking fault by dehumanizing her because of how she is. She was drunk. She was wearing this. Oh my God. This shit needs to stop. We need to bring awareness to it. And we sure as hell need to bring awareness to how we do this in little children all the time. Stop crying like a little girl. I'll give you something to cry about. Why are you crying? Stop crying. No, don't cry. Every single time somebody gets upset and emotional and you say, no, don't cry. Oh, no, don't cry. You're fucking playing out the program of dehumanization. Now we have the awareness of it.
So what it sounds like is dehumanization stems from us avoiding the feelings.
Yes.
Us avoiding what we feel on the inside. And so by making them very small and, not even human, then it can not even justifies, but it helps us be able to deal with what we're doing. And then on the other side of it, you were mentioning basically about emotional intelligence and like people having a low emotional intelligence and capacity, like an inability to like feel what it is that this person's bringing to them. And this is something that I've seen a lot in the last few weeks. It's been a constant lesson that's been coming up when I've been hanging around with friends. I'll give an example. Someone was really triggered by someone who was definitely causing harm and not being very nice. And these two people got into a bit of a confrontation. And I was around at a friend's house and one of my friends was consoling, what's that word? Like nurturing her and
consoling,
consoling, that's the word. And she was like, just don't listen to anything she said. And I was like, no, do. Because if she triggered you, that's a roadmap for you to go and heal. And it was like very evident. And I see it everywhere now is people are, just don't listen to what she said. Don't just put the blinders on and none of it's true. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. What did it trigger in you? That's what you need to ask. Like, what programs is it bringing up for you? Because that's the only way that you're going to heal. And by us avoiding our pain in this powerless, weak place, and that's where the world is right now. We're all in, I was there, I'm working through it, right? We're all in this powerless, weak place where we can't handle the pain of another person bringing up their wounds or in any capacity. So I could see how that plays out a lot. And, one of the things that just kept on coming through was I visited Auschwitz when I was a kid. And that was all about dehumanizing. They were literally treated like rats. Absolutely disgusting, and it's wrong. And I didn't realize until now that, that is essentially the same thing as taking someone's power away by not allowing them to feel their pain. And just avoiding one's own feelings, that it's obviously one's way worse than the other in some capacity, but in another they're on the same level.
Yeah, they all stem from the same thing. It's all dehumanization, but of course there's different levels and different severities of it. But that's absolutely beautiful.
I'm going through a very difficult time in my life right now, and I've invited my parents to experience this dark night of the soul that I'm experiencing, just because we're in this place where they're really giving me unconditional love. And yesterday I called my mom and I just needed support. I just needed to speak to somebody. And she said, and I love her, but she says to me, what happened to your bravery, Ellie? She said, you used to be so courageous. You used to just go out and like go after your dreams and like be on television. She's like, what happened to that girl? And I was so taken aback by that. And then she goes, you need to be happy. And she's like, and you're not happy right now. And you need to go back to like who you used to be. And it was this moment where I realized she can't handle what I'm experiencing on an emotional level at all.
Yeah.
So she thinks it's love by saying something like that to me. And it was actually the opposite of love.
Yes.
And it really showed me like, because she showed up like that so much for me, I see it in the way that I show up to my sister when she's been upset in the past before, of like not being able to hold her emotional trauma because my mother couldn't do that for me. And like, even in this situation now of like, that's not love when you're telling me to just be happy and ignore that this is a huge part of me. This sadness, this depression has been here and I've been in denial of it for so long. And now you're saying to ignore all of that and just be happy. And I was like, that's where she's at. And it really made me see like, wow, like, you have to go into the pain in order to be able to show up for others.
Yes. Because when you cannot, that's so beautiful, so beautiful. And that is such a perfect example of how we dehumanize and we have no idea we're doing it. It's one of my sayings. How are we actually showing up in the world versus how we like to think we are? So how we like to think we are is be happy, don't be sad, just be happy. Oh, I just want you to be happy. I'm being supportive. I'm being loving, except that I'm not. I'm dehumanizing you, and I have no idea that I'm doing it. And this is part of the awakening process. This is part of what we need to awaken to help awaken ourselves and humanity. How am I actually treating other people when I say, don't worry about it, just ignore, just bypass, just be happy? Well, except that I'm not happy. There's pain in here that needs my attention. I'm feeling it right now inside of my body. You know, I am upset, I'm scared, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I'm in grief, I'm whatever. None of it is wrong. It is right here, right now. And we have to learn how to, not just to grow up, we have to learn how to become powerful. Powerless people avoid, ignore, cope, suppress, deny. Powerlessness. Weak people don't heal. Warriors do. We have to turn into the warriors and say, wow, this hurts, doesn't it? And I'm going to go inside of it and I'm going to love it and I'm going to alchemize it. Because if I can do that for myself in my pain, that means I can actually finally show up for other human beings with that level of power. That level of power means unconditional love. It means that I can embrace you. I can hold you. I can support you. I can love you. I can be divine spaciousness for you in the most loving, divine way, selfless way, because I'm powerful now enough. I'm powerful enough to actually do that for you when you're in your pain. I don't make your pain wrong anymore because I'm too weak to handle your pain. That's dehumanization, an aspect of it. It's part of it.
Ellie, I'd also add that in some capacity your mother was right, because I believe the definition of bravery, the difference between bravery and courage, is bravery is to not know the fear and to just go in. And difference with courage is actually knowing the fear and going in anyway. So in some capacity, you are not brave anymore because you are seeing all of your fear and now you are courageous. And courage is higher than bravery because bravery is in some aspects unconscious because they're not looking at the fear. So the thing that I would like to ask you is, what this younger version of you who was brave, who was that? And are you feeling now that you're in courage?
First of all, drop the mic on that one. Yes, Danny. Woo! That's some wisdom right there. Oh, beautiful. I have to acknowledge that. Go ahead, Ellie.
Wow. yes, I feel like when I was brave before, it was just me in my ego wanting to prove myself to everybody. And I didn't look at anything that was coming up for me ever. And now I'm in a place where everything has arose, and I am facing everything straight into it. And it has brought up courage in me. It has brought up a version of me that is very powerful, because it really makes me see and understand that what it truly means to be a warrior. You know, I think for so long I thought doing all of these other things were the definition of being a warrior, but truly this period of my life has shown me, like, facing every single fear, every inch of my darkness, every aspect of my shadow, that's courage. And to be able to be standing here right now and to be speaking and to get up every day and not fall into what the ego wants from me and my mental programs has really shown me who I really am. And I know that this is the beginning of everything for me. And the cycle of wisdom was by far the most difficult, but this is what it means to truly show up for yourself. And I realized too, like, I've been dehumanizing myself my whole life, you know, just completely shitting on all of these aspects of me that were me. And now to be able to just drop in and love it, because it's so visceral for me in my physical body. And when I'm experiencing it, before it used to be this thing of, please give me anything to make this go away. And now it's the complete opposite. It's, I'm experiencing this, I'm letting it all come up, and I'm just going to drop in and love this so hardcore, because there is no other way. There's no other way to come home than to really face these demons head on. And finding love in the darkness has been the greatest victory.
Oh, magnificent. Magnificent. Beautiful. Beautiful, Ellie. There you go.
Yeah.
And that courageousness, that's what leads us to our connection to what divine power actually is. It also leads us to stop living the life in egoic illusion and to wake up to divine reality. And divine reality is in our divine soul having a human experience. In our human experiences, we go through some shit. We go through painful things that cause our painful emotions. And those emotions are teachers. We are meant to learn from them. Life, we are not here for every second of every minute of every hour of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year that we're alive, for life to be fucking easy breezy. And it doesn't mean life is not super easy and absolute in flow, that things don't just come, they flood in and they flow in and you don't have to do anything. Here it is. That's part of it too. You know, blissful feelings, joyful feelings, happiness. That's all part of the human experience. But we need to wake up and grow up out of negative emotions, and painful times are not part of human experience. There's something wrong with you if you're sad. What the fuck? No, get out of the ignorance and the immaturity, for crying out loud. Because when we are in that level of ignorance and immaturity, we are the ones in weakness, powerlessness, low emotional IQ when we behave that way. And when we do that, we force other people. We don't acknowledge, we don't validate, we don't offer unconditional love. We don't offer selflessness. We don't offer love and support to people in a healthy, divine way when we are in these lower programs of suppressing, avoiding, and even dehumanizing. We need to stop dehumanizing little children. Oh, no, don't cry. Why not? They're sad. They're frustrated. They don't understand what's happening right now. They don't get it. They have a cognitive level equivalent to a 2-year-old because they're 2, for example. And instead of expecting them to be, high IQ awakened adults, which is insane, you see that they're just 2. And at that 2-year-old cognitive level, one little thing, they don't get their way, they're not going to understand it, and they're going to have an emotional reaction. Stop dehumanizing and forcing them to suppress how they feel. Instead, teach them, oh, you're really frustrated and sad right now. That's okay. Let's work through it. And you teach them how to process their pain in real time. And yes, they can learn this starting as early as 2. I used to coach and teach this to a billion freaking parents out there. It actually works if you know how to do it, but you have to wake up and see that you are forcing people to not be human. You're not acknowledging their humanness. Your divine soul doesn't get frustrated, doesn't cry. Your human self does. And guess what? You are here in human form to have a human experience. Stop dehumanizing your human experience.
You know, this brought up something as you were talking then that allowed me to, it was like the penny dropped, because we avoid, you're saying it's like we avoid the feelings of shame and guilt by dehumanizing. And one of the teachings that you brought to me is that shame and guilt are divine communication. And so if we were actually feeling the shame and guilt, we wouldn't create the dehumanization. So the dehumanization is a manifestation of our disconnection to our divine communication.
You got it. Boom. Drop the mic on that. That is exactly
Yeah.
it.
So the more that we really connect deeply to ourselves and to our feelings, the more that our outside world will start to change. And what
Yes.
we are, the disconnect we're having within ourselves is the reflection of the disconnect that we see out there. And in this case, we're talking about dehumanization.
You got it. That's exactly it. And to wake up and understand that. So here's what happens, because we are nothing but everything is energy, and we are one. Whether you know what that means or not, it doesn't matter. We are one. We are energetically connected. We are in oneness, even though we don't live that out yet in our human experience. It's still a universal truth. Okay. And what that means is, because we are one, when you are in front of me and you are upset or angry or frustrated or sad or in grief, what that triggers inside of me are the same emotions. To some degree, that is going to trigger those same emotions to some extent inside of me, because we're one. So that means if you're in pain, I feel the pain. And you don't have to be hyper, sensitive, hyper empathic, or any of those for this to be truth. It is truth to some degree with people. So if you're sad in front of me and I then feel your sadness, when we are divine beings, conscious beings, that me feeling your sadness or your emotional pain automatically as a byproduct is supposed to then activate compassion from me. So I get to feel, oh my gosh, you're so sad right now. And then automatically, if I'm in my divinity, not in my programming, my woundedness, I'm not running a program of dehumanizing you. What comes out of that is compassion. Okay, that's what arises out of us. And so if we really were healed and whole, we would just have compassion for the person in front of us who is in pain, which means if I'm in compassion for you, I feel compassion for you, I'm going to be able to selflessly support you, even if it just means to listen with love and non-judgment, because I have compassion for your pain right now, right? When we are doing something unloving or harmful, if I am doing something unloving or harmful, I was just really pretty mean to you. I did something that was just, it wasn't nice, or I said something that was pretty hurtful. And I said that, and then you're upset. What do some people do? Oh, come on, I was just joking around. Form of projection. But how manipulative is that? That right there, if what I just said or did created emotional pain that really hurt your feelings, and I really was me, like I was coming from an unloving place, genuinely. What I would then feel in that moment when you were hurt by me, I would immediately feel shame. That's divine shame. That's what I call divine shame. That is your divine communication that what you just did was really unloving. You should heal that. You should fix that. Correct it right now. That divine shame lets me know, but I don't want to feel shame, because we learn in societies to completely suppress and avoid our shame. We also shifted into all this spiritual bypassing bullshit where people are like, no shame, heal your shame. You shouldn't feel shame. Well, you shouldn't be trapped in your shame, but actually shame is divine communication. If I just did something really horrible, I said something really mean and nasty to Ellie and Danny right now, and it really hurt their feelings, I'm like, oh, come on, get over it. Suck it up, buttercup. right? If I did that, what I'm doing is to some degree, I'm already running programs of dehumanization. You shouldn't feel anything negative because I was an asshole. I don't want to face my shame. I don't want to face the responsibility that is mine for hurting your feelings and causing those emotions in you. I don't want to take ownership of that. So instead, I'll shame you. I'll dehumanize you. And I'll tell you, grow up. Oh, it's just a joke. You can't take a joke or whatever it might be. Stop crying. Get over it. No, we need to grow up and we need to become more loving beings and realize that even if I'm the one who made a mistake or I made a poor choice or I was the ugly one, I need to own that. And then I need to sit and process with you because I'm the one who caused that harm to begin with. That's what a divine human does. A divine human doesn't ever not make a mistake or fall from grace. A divine human, a conscious human, when they do, if and when they do, they own it in real time and say, that was a very unloving thing that I just said. And I totally understand why you're hurt right now. And I would love the opportunity to connect in a loving way and process with you. And I want you to, I'm open. Just please share with me what's coming up for you. What did I trigger in you? Because I can see that it caused harm. That's a divinely conscious being.
I grew up in a culture in the UK where this exactly what you're talking about is very prevalent. I don't know if you're familiar with the way that like British humor works, but if you're in England, it's all about banter and it's how much can you dig at your friend and try and get them kind of like riled up and pissed off, and just how much of a joke can you make out of your friend. And you know, I definitely engaged in it when I was younger. I still do very softly now, occasionally, but there was something deep inside of me that really didn't align with what was going on. And I still remember the feeling right now. And it was one of the things that pushed me out of the country and led me more towards America, because I didn't experience that over here. Like, yeah, there's a bit of banter, but in the UK, what the areas that I grew up in, it was nonstop all the time. And there was a lot of that, like, and I know a lot of it was my wounding, and I can feel now that, you know, it was a lot of like micro triggers all the time, which was very uncomfortable. And I know if I go back now, I'm not going to be triggered as much, but at the same time, it's not a very loving way to spend time with people that you're supposed to be enjoying. It's like, why am I trying to make you feel bad when I could be making you try to feel good? It makes no sense to me.
Beautiful. And, you know, I want to piggyback off of that because I love that you shared that. It's there is joking around, sense of humor, sarcasm, banter that comes from wounding. And then there's comedy, joking, banter that comes from a healed whole place. It comes from a divine playfulness. And boy, it might look the same on the outside, but boy, does it feel different when someone is teasing you or joking with you or like making fun of you a little bit, but they are not coming from wounding. They are not coming from judgment. They're not coming from superiority. They're not coming from a place where they're trying to make you look bad or embarrass you so that they can feel superior. They're not coming from wounding, right? They're coming from a divine playfulness. There's a difference. Divine playfulness, the energy feels very different. It feels very different. It's like, oh my God, you're such an asshole. Are you kidding me? You just said that, right? And you banter back, right? And you just playfully will tease each other, but you're doing it from a place of love. It's divine playfulness. It's fun versus how a lot of us learned to grow up and just make fun of people and put them down and humiliate them and make them feel small and, you know, really try to embarrass them or point out like their worst characteristics or their sensitivities, the place that they really would be mortified if people knew about. Let's share that and spread that around. That comes from wounding, and that comes from a very harmful place. You know, I'm running programs that cause harm to other people. I'm not coming from a place of divine playfulness. Divine playfulness, look, the universe, source, the creator, however you want to refer to it, is fucking hilarious. Fucking hilarious. If you think Angels aren't making fun of you. They're fucking laughing at you every day at how retarded we are as humans. They just are. They are. We're hilarious. We are fucktards. And we do the dumbest shit all the time. We make horrible mistakes. Like divinity laughs at us. Trust me when I tell you. Divinity laughs at us. But they do it in a playful, like, oh, you silly human. Like, you'll get it at some point. There's a playfulness here where we can tease each other and banter. And if it ever is, here's one more clue that somebody is really coming from just divine playfulness. Maybe they'll tease you or make fun of you, and it kind of hurt your feelings, though, because maybe it really did hit a bit of a wound that you still have. The person coming from divine playfulness would say, oh my God, I am just having fun. I am so sorry if I crossed the line or that hurt your feelings. I would never in my life want to hurt your feelings. So what can I do right now? I won't joke with you like that again because it hurt your feeling. Like they would just see it, that I triggered a bit of a wound in you. Does it mean I'm coming from a negative place? No, I'm not going to own your programs. You see the difference here? But what I do see is it may be because even when I was coming from a divine playfulness, it triggered a bit of a wound and it hurt your feelings. I'm not going to own your program, but I'm going to see that because I'm in divine playfulness, which means I'm also in the way of responsibility, which is and the way of compassion, right? All of those ways of oneness, we are one. So because it did trigger something in you, I'm immediately going to own that. And I'm going to let you know in a very loving way, I'm never in my life would I mean to cause you hurt feelings. What can I do to help process and make this better for you right now? I won't joke like that with you ever again. And I'm so sorry that it hurt your feelings. That's the difference. The banter would stop. We would lovingly embrace the person if it activated a bit of their wounds. And then you would process together and move on, and there would be no hard feelings because the person with the wounding realized, no, you really, that's a soft spot of mine. You would never know that, but it is. Thank you so much for being present with me. It is mine, but thank you for being present with me. You see it? That's the way that we work in towards oneness with one another.
I had an experience where I had this humor that you speak of, and I was when I was going through that acute phase of the divine feminine, the Kundalini awakening energy coming through me, and I did a Tim Wilde meditation, and he was talking all about how you can ask for different percentages of light quotient to come through, and I was in the meditation and I was saying activate 200% light quotient, right? Quotient, or how do you say that word? And later on that day, it was so intense. It felt like I was losing grip of reality. The energy was moving through me, like it was making me feel sick. It was like the world was spinning, and like it was so intense. And as I like looked up to the universe and said, "What are you doing?" I heard this voice in my head. I heard the voice in my head that said, what about activate 200% light quotient? And I was like, fuck yeah, I asked for this, didn't I? And there's a couple other things that it said, and it wasn't my thoughts, but it was very, very dry, very comical. And it was like someone was just going, you asked for this. This is exactly what you asked for. What are you complaining?
Oh, it's fantastic.
You know, while you were talking, Rachel, what was coming up for me is being Asian my whole life. I feel like my people have always been like the butt of the joke, and they call us the model minority because we're quiet. We don't say anything. And I remember growing up, I was always like super emotional, and like, you know, Korean people in general were not, you know, mental illness and all that stuff is very taboo. And we don't speak about our feelings at all. And I remember I was going through a really hard time, and I was talking to my friend's mom, and I was like, you know, like, I'm just really stressed out about like school and like where I'm going to college. And she was like, yeah, but you're Asian, so like you're going to be fine. And I remember feeling so much shame because I wasn't what they thought an Asian person was. And I was so in my feelings, and I was in so much stress, and it brought all this shame within me of like, well, I should be living up to what society deems me to be, which is just like not emotional, just study, be quiet, be a good person in society, be good to your family or whatever. And I realized, like, as a race, we've been like, Asian people have been
Yes.
so dehumanized to just be this one category, and everything else is stripped away from us, and we're not allowed to feel or express or be, or, and I, as you're talking, I just, all this shame started coming up inside of me of like, oh my God, I've been living in that box my whole life.
Yeah.
And like, I really am here to shatter all of that. But yeah, so much dehumanization when it comes to being Asian.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of my exes actually used to say the reason why she can't feel feelings is because she's Irish, and it was to do with like her culture and her lineage. And like looking back now, I'm like, you're just completely dehumanizing yourself,
Yes.
just because of the culture you came from.
Yep.
Step into your divinity, grow your power. Like you
Yeah.
can feel whatever you want. That's your choice.
And you see it. You see how we do it to entire races of people.
Yeah.
You know, like we humans are nut bars. Like that's what divinity laughs at us. Like, yeah, nut bars, get a clue. Like, what are you doing to each other? It's horrible what we do. That, oh, but you'll be fine. You see how you were dismissed? Your feelings were not validated. Oh, but Ellie, you'll be fine. You're Asian. You'll be fine. I'm human. I'm human. The dog was like, right.
Yeah.
Yes, you're human. Yes. Validate. Roof. I love it. It's perfect timing.
I just got this little vision of, you know, the way that we look down on little children, and you know, they're banging into things and they're play fighting, and that's like the same thing with the higher souls looking down on us, like, oh, look how cute they are. Look, oh, bless them.
Look how cute they try to suppress all those feelings.
Yeah.
You know, Rachel, I always love to play the person, the audience, or the listener that doesn't know how to navigate at all the healing journey, or how to really come home to themselves. And so, you know, they can be listening to this and they're like, okay, this is amazing information, but how do I start raising my emotional IQ? How do I begin to start healing myself and coming back to love and the divine being that I am? So I'd love for, you know, anybody who's listened to this for the first time, like, how do they navigate and how do they begin their journey into themselves?
Yeah, beautiful question. So, and thank you for asking on behalf of some new listeners that could be tuning in. The first thing I'm going to tell you is get a free consultation and come to our coaching programs, and pay attention to mastersofselfuniversity.com. We have classes that on everything like this starting in January 2023. So we will have classes. We also have coaching programs you can benefit from right now. That's number one. In the meantime, acute level of self-awareness. So it's challenge yourself, invite yourself in a very loving way to see how you may be running these programs of suppression of your emotions, suppression of other people's emotions, whether they're your siblings, children, friends, loved ones, partner, right? If you're telling your partner or loved ones or people you know, like, oh, no, don't cry, or no, cry. Let's take your mind off of things. You're actually running programs of some aspects of what dehumanization is. You know, we don't have to be in slavery times anymore to dehumanize people. We still do it. We just don't do it in such extreme, harsh, you know, obvious ways. And that's the tricky part about this stuff is I give the examples of, and when Danny brought up like the Holocaust, talk about a massive example of dehumanizing an entire race of people is the Holocaust. It's a beautiful example. But we give big extreme examples because they happened. They're good to learn from. But we have to start to awaken to, well, I mean, oh my God, I don't dehumanize because I would never do that. Understand the education that's being offered. And that means the more watered down ways, could say it this way, the more watered down ways, the more subtle ways that when we've gone through the Holocaust, when we've gone through slavery, when we've gone through the enslavement of women and children, which still goes on today, by the way, sex trafficking, that's a real thing. when we go through those things as a human race all over the world, we have carried those programs of dehumanization with us. They're just more subtle now. They're a little sneakier now because we don't think we're doing anything wrong. When our child cries and we say, no, don't cry here. Do you want a cookie? What the fuck? You're forcing the child to not feel their pain, which means you're preventing them from learning how to heal their pain. You're forcing them to try to show up like a little robot that doesn't feel anything. And then you'll wonder why they're a teenager and the little boy goes to school and shoots up the fucking school. They're so emotionally fragile, they can't handle anything. They can't handle life. They have to be an adult at some point. They can't handle life. They can't handle anything in a partnership or relationship because they can't handle their feelings, which means they sure as hell can't handle another person's feelings. So where do we begin is increasing our level of self-awareness. How may I be contributing to forcing another person to suppress their true emotions in my presence? Number 2, how do I dehumanize myself? How do I abandon myself over and over and over again? Because I avoid, I spiritually bypass, I suppress, I deny, I cope. I go jump on, Netflix, or I do screen time, or I go to food, or I go to drugs or alcohol or porn, or whatever I might use to distract myself away from my pain. That is an aspect of dehumanizing myself, which means I guarantee you dehumanize and run programs to other people. So you have to be willing to invite yourself, open your heart, and ask yourself, okay, my higher soul, my divine guidance, please help me to see with divine sight and how I may be contributing to these programs of dehumanization to myself and to everybody else that I know. Help me to see, be willing to see, you'll see it. And if you're willing to see it, it can then be healed. That's where you start to see it.
For myself, reflection has been a really big part of my journey and helping me deeply understand who I am. But it's not something I actually hear you talk about too much. Do you ever journal? Is that something you do? Is it in your practice?
No.
But
I will say this, but let me say this, that when you get to a level, this is for every person on their healing journey, reflection is really, what Danny's saying is really critical. It is so vitally important. Reflecting on, how did I show up? Let me awaken to, in that moment of unconsciousness, what programs was I running? It's reflection, and that's an aspect of self-awareness. It's really important and really critical. But you also will heal enough and become so present that you don't need to do that anymore at some point. Why? Well, because if I'm actually triggered in a moment, I can see in that very moment. I don't lack presence. There's some programs running here that would love to take over. And I see them and I love them and I process them. There's nothing to reflect on because I'm now so fully present with them, if that makes sense.
100%, because that's been my experience. 2018, when I first fell into depression, it was, I could literally I spent whole days journaling, just getting out what was in there. And the teachings that you've offered is to get out of the mind and get more into the heart, right? And I found that now that I do that, I don't need to journal because I'm not writing out the story that's playing in my mind for me to see it. Yeah.
Yes.
So I assumed you were going to say that. Was there a time in your life that you just suddenly were like, I don't need to do this anymore? Or was it like you always just work things out in your heart? Or was there like a day where you were like, okay?
I mostly worked through it in presence. Like I was pretty decent at that, but I wasn't perfect at it. I didn't just always have this divine, the ability to go right into presence. There was definitely a transition. There were times when I needed to write down and clarify the different types of programs, wounds that got activated, the wounds that create the program. So I definitely went through periods of time where, that's partially how I created the coaching programs at Masters of Self University. That's how I was able to break it down to make it so easily teachable and digestible in bite-sized pieces, to break it down into not just that I feel bad and I'm triggered right now. Well, big fucking deal. Who can't tell that? I mean, really. It's what programs are actually running, what wound got activated that actually triggered a cluster of programs in this moment. So I did spend time in the past of, well, my mental programs are this, but there's different programs running. My emotional programs are that. And your behavioral programs might be completely different than how you feel, right? And that's the beauty of this work at Masters of Self University. So I did spend time writing down, look at these different types of programs. How do they get activated? Why do they get activated? And that's what helped me to form the coaching programs at Masters of Self University in order to get to the wound much more easily and efficiently, and then heal that core wound that's making all these programs activated to begin with. So I did go through phases of that. Yeah, it was a beautiful learning experience.
Yeah, Rachel, just to wrap this really beautiful conversation up, the dehumanization is so subtle, and even as I'm working through this intense death cycle that I'm in, I found myself being hard on my inner child. So I would even dehumanize her, being like, just stop this, just get up, we got to pummel through this, get it together. And it's like, I'm not showing up in love at all in that moment. In fact,
Beautiful.
That pushes her away even further and is
Yes.
even more scared of me and doesn't trust me when I'm doing
Yes.
that. And that's a program that I'm running of just get up and suck it up, buttercup. And I realized even in the subtle moments of the healing of how do I show up in love in all of these little moments?
Yes. And to invite in, one of the ways of oneness is harmlessness and gentleness.
Yeah.
To be harmlessness and gentleness, to be that way, that we have to create a really safe place for our wounded inner child aspects to feel safe enough to show themselves and to guide them out of that fear, to guide them to connect to their true source of power. And just to be clear, I want to add, it doesn't mean sometimes that we don't need, and I don't even love this term, but everybody understands it, so I'm going to say it. It doesn't mean we don't need some tough love sometimes. Tough love is unconditional love, though. So what does it mean? It doesn't lack love. It's love. It's unconditional love. What does it mean? In some scenarios, we do feel really scared. So, but that now's the time to connect to our power. It's not suck it up, get over it. But you connect to your power then. Let's go. Connect to your power, little one. You can talk to your inner child sometimes. It's very appropriate to say, I hear you. I feel you. I feel your pain. I see it. You validate and acknowledge the pain that is there because it is real. And with that, you say, but now's the time to connect to your power. So let's go connect to your power. You're not saying suppress, get over it, avoid. You're saying connect to your power, heal it. Let's go. Heal yourself. Really heal yourself right now. Come on, little one. Let's go. You can do it. You can do it because I see your power. You see your power now too. Let's go. See your power. Connect to it. Heal. And you can encourage. That's a tough love, so to speak, but you can feel, even when I say those words, you feel the nurturing and the gentleness of that. That's a way of honoring your power because I see your power. It doesn't lack the way of honoring in it. You feel that harmlessness and gentleness. It's just, but you have the power. So let's go connect. Come on, connect to your power. Do it. Grow your light. Love yourself. Process your pain. Let's go. And you can feel the love in it. It's not harsh.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. For anybody at home, please comment, share, subscribe, rate, visit masterofselfuniversity.com, work with our coaches, set up a free consultation. And is there anything else you guys would love to drop before we end?
Thank you for joining us. It's always such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you so much for being here with us, Rachel. And until next time, guys, we will see you then. Bye.
Bye, everybody.